Odysseus, the beginning of the legend. Sometimes the return home is not to the place where you began. Sometimes returning home is about rediscovering who you are. Odysseus, a name etched into legends, a man who incurred the wrath of the gods and resisted the trials of fate, the journey he must embark on to return home from the victorious siege of Troy would not be a simple one, for this journey would be filled with chasms that needed to be crossed, not only on the maps, but also in the depths of his soul. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and leave a comment. Your support means a lot to us. He was the king of Ithaca and one of the greatest heroes of Greek mythology. He was known not only for his courage, but also for his intelligence and cunning. A leader who ruled his people with justice, a loving father, and a loyal husband. His kingdom of Ithaca was a mountainous and small island, but it held the greatest value for him. Odysseus guided his people with wisdom and was a master of the art of war. His justice and leadership were spoken of with respect among neighboring kingdoms. However, his life was not just about sitting peacefully on his throne. He always felt a yearning for the seas and the unknown. His wife Penelope was the wise woman who kept the kingdom standing in his absence. Renowned for her patience and loyalty, she hoped every day for Odysseus's return. Although numerous suitors would seek her hand and his throne, she never betrayed her husband. Their son Telemachus grew up never knowing his father. He inherited his father's courage and intellect, but as years passed, the legendary figure of his father became a mere dream for him. His father's return was a dream, a myth to him. However, fate would not grant Odysseus a peaceful life. His path would turn into a challenging adventure filled with divine interventions. He would have to participate in the Trojan War, and his journey back home would take much longer than expected. Nevertheless, Odysseus's heart would always remain in Ithaca with his loved ones. The Trojan War, the legend begins. Odysseus played a significant role in the great Trojan War between the Greeks and Trojans. This war began when Paris, a Trojan prince, abducted Helen, the wife of Menelaus, the king of Sparta. The Greek kings united and laid siege to Troy, leading to a war that lasted for 10 years. However, this war was not only a battlefield of clashing swords, but also a stage filled with intrigues, divine interventions, and clever strategies. Although Odysseus initially did not wish to join the war, fate thrust him into this great struggle. At first, he guided the army with his clever plans, but over time he proved himself among the Greek commanders. While the Greeks remained stuck in the battlefield, unable to breach the walls of Troy for years, the idea of the Trojan horse devised by Odysseus changed the fate of the war. The Greek soldiers hid inside a giant wooden horse, deceiving the Trojans and capturing the city from within. This cunning plan led to the end of the war and the fall of Troy. However, the real test for Odysseus began when the war concluded. The journey home would turn him into a true legend. In a state of victory, wanting to return to Ithaca, Odysseus and his men drew the wrath of the gods upon themselves. Poseidon, the god of the sea, sent a curse that would cause Odysseus to wander the seas for years. Countless dangers he faced on this journey tested him repeatedly. Cyclops, Polyphemus. Odysseus and his men took refuge in the cave of the one-eyed giant Polyphemus. What initially seemed like a hospitable encounter quickly turned into a nightmare. Polyphemus began to devour his men one by one. Seizing the opportunity while the giant was asleep, Odysseus cleverly introduced himself as nobody. He then got the giant drunk with strong wine, and while he was incapacitated, he blinded him with a heated stake. When morning came, they managed to escape by hiding under the sheep. However, this escape brought a great curse with it, for Polyphemus was Poseidon's son, and he prayed to his father to curse Odysseus. This was one of the calamities that would make Odysseus's journey home even more difficult. Aeolus's winds. The wind god Aeolus sealed all the winds in a bag so that Odysseus could safely return home. He only instructed him to carefully steer his ship until he reached Ithaca. Throughout the journey, Odysseus navigated his ship very cautiously, but the length of the travel and the constant state of alert made him deeply fatigued. At one point, succumbing to exhaustion, he fell asleep. During this time, his crew, thinking the bag contained valuable treasures or magical powers, succumbed to their curiosity and opened it. The released winds suddenly unleashed a violent storm, tossing the ship around, and just as Odysseus was close to reaching Ithaca, he was swept far away again. When he desperately returned to Aeolus's island, the god refused to even see him. Aeolus regarded Odysseus's continued misfortune as a sign that the gods were against him, and declined to help again. Odysseus and his men had to accept their fate and set sail once more to find another way. Laestrygonians, these giant, man-eating creatures, attacked Odysseus's ships, sinking most of them. Only his ship survived, along with a few of his men. Journey to Hades. Odysseus descended into the realm of the dead to converse with the soul of the wise prophet Tiresias. Tiresias revealed what he needed to do to return home and how to evade Poseidon's wrath. Helios's sacred cattle. The crew had been warned not to eat Helios's sacred cattle. However, driven by despair from hunger, Odysseus's men slaughtered the god's animals, leading Zeus to unleash a great storm that sank their ship, leaving only Odysseus alive. After these events, Odysseus found himself cast onto the island of Calypso. Poseidon's wrath had not yet ended, but the other gods on Olympus would soon intervene to allow him to return home. He shouted for help from the other Cyclopes, but when he said, "Nobody has harmed me," no one came to his aid. The following morning, Odysseus and his men managed to escape the cave by holding onto the sheep. However, this escape drew the wrath of Poseidon, making Odysseus's return home even more challenging. Circe's Island. The sorceress Circe turned Odysseus's crew into pigs. However, with the help of the god Hermes, Odysseus resisted the enchantment and won Circe's trust. Impressed by Odysseus's bravery, she transformed his men back to their original forms. Odysseus and his crew stayed on Circe's island as honored guests for a year, resting and stockpiling food. But as time passed, Odysseus's heart burned with a desire to return to Ithaca. Circe told him he must go to Hades to seek guidance from the prophet Tiresias in the land of the dead. Thus Odysseus set sail toward his next great trial. The Sirens. The Sirens, who lured sailors to their deaths with their enchanting songs, posed a significant threat to Odysseus and his men. He protected his crew by plugging their ears with beeswax. As for himself, he tied himself to the mast of the ship to hear their song without succumbing to their deadly allure. In that moment, the sirens' voices penetrated his soul. The pleasures they promised, the memories of his past, and the uncertainties of the future captivated him. No matter how irresistible it was, he could not break free from his bindings, allowing the ship to pass safely through the danger. Finally, when the sirens' song faded into the horizon, Odysseus continued on his journey, once again desiring to return to Ithaca. Scylla and Charybdis. Odysseus faced one of his toughest decisions. On one side was Scylla, a monstrous sea creature, with 6 heads, each lined with razor-sharp teeth. On the other side was Charybdis, a massive whirlpool that swallowed ships and sailors. Remembering Circe's warnings, Odysseus chose to sail close to Scylla. He and his men had to confront inevitable losses. As their ship passed near Scylla, the creature struck swiftly, snatching 6 sailors and dragging them down into the depths of the sea. As the crew cried out in agony, Odysseus kept his eyes fixed ahead, continuing to steer the ship to avoid the powerful whirlpool of Charybdis. Tearfully, he pressed on, for as a leader, he had to make tough decisions. Ultimately, he navigated through the deadly region and moved toward new dangers. But even after all these perils, Poseidon would not allow him to return home. The waves cast him upon different shores time and again, and storms led him astray. Odysseus battled the sea's relentless fury, repeatedly losing hope. No matter how hard he tried, fate tested him again and again. For him, returning home had become not just a journey, but a struggle against the gods. In the endless blue of the sea, there lay an island that had been forgotten and cursed by the gods, Ogygia. This mysterious land with its lush forests, crystal clear, springs, and golden sands resembled paradise on earth. Here lived a nymph, Calypso, with timeless and enchanting beauty, alone in a world that was a prison of the fate she had awaited for centuries. Until one day, wild waves cast a weary warrior, desperate and exhausted, ashore. That moment marked the beginning of a great story that would disrupt the island's silence. As Odysseus opened his eyes, he found himself in a magical garden. The fragrance of exotic flowers surrounded him, weaving into his soul like a soothing melody. Amidst the rainbow-like blooms, silver rivers, and trees adorned with pearls, stood a figure glowing in the light. Approaching with graceful steps, this figure moved in harmony with nature herself. Before him was a woman with eyes as bright as stars and hair dancing in the golden wind, Calypso. Her presence was powerful enough to take away all of Odysseus's fatigue. "Who are you, exile of fate?" Calypso asked, her voice resonating like an ancient song carried by the wind, full of both curiosity and wisdom. Odysseus took a deep breath, his gaze drifting far away, and responded, weighed down by the years he had lost. "I am Odysseus, the exile of the seas, the man who cannot return home." Calypso embraced him, healing him and offering him his home. Days turned into weeks and months passed. Calypso's magic seeped into the weary soul of Odysseus. Time stood still, and the world was forgotten. But for Odysseus, was this love a refuge or a captivity within a gilded cage? As days flowed by, he experienced a growing conflict between the fire of freedom within him and the comfort Calypso offered. But would this love be a paradise or a prison? The affection Calypso offered, Odysseus had turned into a binding bond. She wished to make him forget the lands beyond the sea, Ithaca and his family. While battling the fire of freedom within him, Calypso even offered him immortality. Yet this offer was not a blessing for Odysseus. It felt like an inescapable eternity. "Stay with me," Calypso said, her voice soft as the soothing waves of the ocean. "Time will never wear you down. You will not age, and you will not suffer. Here, you will lose yourself in my embrace for eternity." Yet for Odysseus, immortality was not a gift, but a curse. He could not forget his past. Ithaca lived forever in his heart. The waiting of his wife Penelope, the eyes of his son Telemachus. The eternity offered to him meant being forever severed from his loved ones and his home. Night after night, he gazed at the endless blue of the sea, trying to feel the winds of Ithaca. But every morning when the sun rose again, he was still. On Ogygia, an endless life turned into a prison when he could not share it with his beloved ones. There was peace in Calypso's arms, but for Odysseus, true peace would only come when he returned to Ithaca. He tried to sense the winds of Ithaca while gazing at the sea every night, but every morning when the sun rose, he woke again in the warm and desolate arms of Calypso. He would drift into sleep with the hope the sea brought, yet every day he opened his eyes to the same captivity. But even the gods could not govern love. The mightiest of the Olympian gods, Zeus, sent the messenger, Hermes, to him. Hermes, with his golden sandals, soared through the sky and descended upon Ogygia. The island's exotic beauty and Calypso's mesmerizing presence could not stop him. Zeus's command was clear: Odysseus must be set free. Calypso could not resist the will of Olympus, yet receiving this order was a devastation for her. The man who ended her millennia of solitude must be lost to her. Pain and surrender filled her eyes. The gods always govern human fate. "But they never allow us a moment of love," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. But even with her heart breaking, she had to accept Odysseus's freedom. Calypso's heart shattered. For her, love was not just about loving, but about being able to set the one you love free. Through tears, she accepted the inevitable weight of fate and sent her beloved back to his endless solitude. Calypso prepared a raft with trembling hands. Each board she nailed in place pulled another piece from her heart. She looked into Odysseus's eyes one last time. Eyes that rivaled the endless blue of the sea, whispered a final farewell to her. Silence echoed between them, and even the wind struggled to carry the weight of their parting. Calypso, trying to hide the tears flowing from her eyes, whispered, "I have written your name, which will echo forever in the seas, among the stars. Go, but do not forget. Do not let me be forgotten." Odysseus broke free from the chains of love and stepped into freedom. However, Calypso's tears forever mingled with the sea of Ogygia Island. The wind carried her name away, whispering it along. With the waves, the shores of Ogygia turned silent with the weight of endless waiting, and they would never again blossom in the waters where Odysseus had passed. As Calypso donned her loneliness once more, she gazed at the endless blue of the sea, continuing to wait for his return. But now she knew. Some farewells are as permanent as time itself. When Odysseus finally reached the shores of Ithaca, guided by the waves and winds, the first thing he felt was neither happiness nor victory. The years of war, the rage of the gods, and his losses weighed heavily upon his shoulders. As he set foot on the ground, he paused for a moment. Was this truly the place he called home? His eyes scanned the palace towers, but it was not as it had been. His son Telemachus had grown up, and Penelope continued to wait faithfully, but disorder had disrupted the palace, and nobles who coveted the throne had pressured Penelope. He had returned as a hero, but unease lingered in his heart. Expecting to be welcomed back as a king, he instead felt like a stranger. The whispers of Calypso still echoed in his ears, and at night he saw the shores of Ogygia in his dreams. The long-desired return to his home did not feel fully realized in his mind. Could he find true peace, or would his heart forever be caught between two worlds? The past would not leave him alone. At night, it felt as if Calypso's whispers reached his ears on the wind. The warmth of her embrace, the promise of immortality, the last gaze accompanied by tears sent him off. All of it lingered in his mind. He had returned to Ithaca, reunited with his family, yet there was a void within him. Was he truly free? He had stepped onto his land, but his spirit still wandered on the shores of Ogygia, chasing a whisper lost among the waves. Did returning to Ithaca mean freeing his soul? Or was the true exile living within a memory that could not erase the traces of the past? On one side was Penelope's years of unwavering loyalty, and on the other was Calypso's eternal love. As Odysseus searched for true peace, he realized he was actually pursuing a balance he might never reach. His mind was in Ithaca, but his soul was still adrift in the waves of Ogygia. One part of his heart was bound to the warmth of the past, while the other was tethered to the responsibilities brought by fate. Heroes may sometimes return home, but their hearts often remain incomplete in some way. And perhaps the true exile lay hidden in an endless yearning, and perhaps some journeys never truly end. If this story has moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and leave a comment. With your support, we will continue to tell more legendary tales.